Very, very much for this opportunity to serve. The reason we had two teams was the fact that we had too many for one team, and so we divided the two teams. When Jim came to the Missions Commission and said, we're thinking about, can we have some money? And we said, sure. And so actually it ended up that the Missions Commission funded a lot of our trip, or intended to. Well, as it stands now, the contributions that came in from the parishioners paid for most of our trip. And so the Missions Commission is now offering to pay for car rentals and other things. Just because it was such an overwhelming response from the parishioners, those who could not go with us, those who could not put up with the heat or the humidity or the long hours, who really wanted to help, contributed in other ways.
The center that we mostly worked in at the, it's called the Immigration Assistance Center in the Parish Hall of Sacred Heart Catholic Church, really was precipitated by a huge influx of immigrants from Central America who were held in detention centers as they came across the border, either being caught or were voluntarily turned themselves in. And under current immigration law, unaccompanied single adults are pretty much summarily deported. But if they're children with an adult, the children have special rights under our immigration laws, so they were not sent back immediately. And in the detention center, if they could prove that they had relatives in this country who were willing to send them bus tickets to travel on, they would be taken to a bus station and sent on their way. There were hundreds of families coming through a day. And so the faith community, just basically individuals, started showing up, parking their cars in the parking lot, and serving food and water out of their trunks. This, of course, was not sustainable in the long term, and very shortly, Sacred Heart said, we'll pull together representatives of the faith community and other community organizations, Salvation Army, Food Bank, others, and said, we've got to do something. Now, this is in the context of a very hot political issue around these immigrants, not only in the countrywide, but in McAllen itself. And they took the stand that these are people in need, and we have to do something. So they opened their parish hall, they organized, they connected with the Border Patrol and with the local government.
I don't think we will ever forget our experiences down there. It was also very rewarding in a way, because the families came in with a clothes on their back and a brown envelope with their bus tickets in, and that's all they had. And they went out smiling, and then the difference between them coming in and going out was tremendous.
We always open up our hearts and give whenever we can. These people had nothing, and what touched me is that a mother came in with her baby, maybe 6, 8 months old, no, maybe a little bit older, 9, 10 months old. She was so dehydrated that she could not feed her child. And another mother who was not as dehydrated, the only way that she could help was to take that baby and feed that baby and nurse it because the mother couldn't. If you have nothing and you're willing to give whatever it is that you've got, that touched me the most. And why we as a nation can't do that on a regular basis is beyond me.
People are coming to our country to save their lives, to save the lives of their children. Some of the stories you hear are extremely heart-wrenching, where the threat of 12 and 14-year-old boys being taken out of their schools at that age by gangs who are waiting for them. Mothers going to school every day to try to protect those children. One story I heard was the gangs wanted this child. The mother went to school every day to protect this child. Her neighbor was killed. As an example of what's going to happen to this mother, for instance, if they don't get this child. You hear stories of women and their children molested, trying to get to the site, arriving pregnant. These people are desperate, and they're just right across the border. Not from Mexico, but from Brazil, Guatemala, and other local countries. For me, it was an intense experience.
So one of the things I did when we first got there, because we were the A team, we would scope out all of the different things that needed to be done through the Salvation Army. Some people cooking, some of our people there cooking, and at the food bank where they stored just huge mounds of donations that needed to be sorted through, and some thrown out, some taken to the shelter. But everywhere we went, I asked the question to the people of McAllen, Texas, Father Jim, Eli, the director, and I kept asking the question, what makes this year different? Why this year? Because actually, the things that we did for these folks, the people of McAllen have been doing for years. They have volunteers who basically stay at the bus station, because when the Border Patrol drops them off, they literally open the door, out you go, and these people who speak no English have to find their way to the right bus, and have nothing like what was like the clothes on their back. So people at McAllen, Texas for years have hung out at the bus station, and they, out of the trunks of their car, give these people water and sandwiches to travel with. But this year, the numbers were so overwhelming, the bus station couldn't accommodate all these people, and the faith communities are the ones who got together and said, well, we need to do something. Sacred Heart Catholic Church was chosen because it was just 2 blocks from the bus station. But what I said, and I told this to the priest of that church, is I am overwhelmed with what your parish has sacrificed to run this shelter. And I said, you people gave up your parish hall, your kitchen, your parking lot to run this mission. And I said, I don't know how the people of St. Margaret's would do if Peter stood up in church and said, 2 weeks from today, we're opening up a shelter, and for an unknown time, there would be no use of the parish hall, there'll be no use of the kitchen, there'll be no use of the parking lot, and all the activities that are scheduled, we're gonna find another place for you to do that. And their parish actually had to pay to rent space for some of their other events that were already on the calendar. And I said to him, I am overwhelmed with the generosity of your parish to give all of this away. And he said, 75% of our parish wholeheartedly agree that this was the right thing to do. And he said, 24% was a little caught up on the inconvenience. And he said probably only 1% of the parish came and complained that this was not the right thing to do.
Most of the people that we worked with were from Honduras. So to travel from Honduras up to the Mexican-American border takes, on the average, on a good day or on a good trip, 15 days if they can get the transportation, and in some cases more than 2 months. By this time, these families, mostly young families with young children, some infants, had either been molested, robbed, beaten, or worse, in order to get to cover the trek between Honduras and the United States. Once they're picked up by the Border Patrol, as Harry said, they're put in a detention center. It's kept at 55 degrees. They're given an aluminum blanket. They're fed frozen taco bars or something like that. It's not a hot meal. And so I was thinking about the Romans 8:38. My first day there, I was in a green smock and I was folding clothes and sorting, and all of a sudden, everybody stopped. The door to the parish hall was open, and about 20 to 30 people walked in. And everybody that was working in the center dropped what they were doing. And we applauded. And I thought, this is the first time that any of the immigrants had been received with love.